creeps, Andy here, and today do I have a book for you. I mean I was gonna do a different video today, and then I just finished this book last night and I thought I gotta talk to you guys about it. I have to tell you about it. Now, this book will not be for everyone, and I'm gonna have to be, I don't know if you guys know this, but the first few minutes of a YouTube video you can't really say much, you know, so I gotta waste a little bit of time until we get there. But this is the book that I am referring to. This is by Dennis Cooper, and this is the name of it, and hopefully I can show this, but anyways, this is the book. It was published in 2004, and it's really an interesting read. And don't worry, I'm not going to give anything away. Like, I'm really not going to give you too many details about the plot, because I know a lot of you guys have the same writing or reading style that I like, you know, the same books that I like. We have a lot of the same books in common. So I want you guys to experience this if you haven't read it yet, just on its own, because it's such a cool read. So I'm not going to be giving anything away. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis really quick, and then we're going to go into why this book will not be for everyone. But, you know, got to get past that few minute mark before I say any of these words. So what is the book about? It's essentially about this escort named Brad, and it's told through these internet or these websites where you can kind of rate escorts in your area. It's told through that, and then it's also told through emails, a little bit of emails, and then it's told through forums online. So yeah, okay, we'll get into how interesting it is in a second, but it's basically just about this one escort named Brad, and the more reviews start popping up about this kid, the more people are interested in his story. He seems to be a little unhinged and a little off, and it starts out with people not knowing what's going on with him, but people also being very infatuated with him, and his looks are like super killer, I guess, and a lot of people are interested in finding out for themselves if he really is as good looking as people say he is. And then the story kind of takes a turn, and this other guy named Brian gets involved, and he starts telling way more behind the scenes stuff. Brad ends up telling other people that are hiring him for his escort services that he's scared because he thinks someone's trying to kill him, and then he disappears, and it leaves people to wonder what's going on. And then when someone else pops up somewhere else, people are posting about him, and people are like, is that the Brad? And you're like, is that Brad, or is this guy the same guy as this? And if you like books with unreliable narrators, let me tell you, this book has about 30 of them. So okay, I think we've passed the time now, so let's just get into the stuff. Now, why won't it be for everybody? There is violence beyond comprehension in here. Like, I'm telling you, it talks about snuff films, like it goes into some detail about snuff films, murder, torture, assault, SA, the R word. I mean, the unbelievable violence that is in this book is astounding. So if you want to be traumatized, if you want to be disturbed, and if you want a whole bunch of unreliable narrators in one book, this is perfect for you. Before we get into anything else, I will say it does a little bit remind me of An American Psycho, and then absolutely not at all. So I'm not saying that they're at all alike, but there is definitely a hint of not really knowing if what's going on is actually happening. And I mean, I love unreliable narrators. I love one unreliable narrator, and I think that those stories are told in such an interesting, unique way. If done right, they are one of the most effective books you can read. And because this is a bunch of unreliable narrators and you really don't know what's going on, it makes it even more interesting to me. Now, it is really interesting to read this in the landscape of 2024. This was written 20 years ago. That's crazy. But I think it might be in some ways even more interesting to read now, because not only is it about the male escort service and that sort of stuff, but it also is about the, I don't know, scariness of the internet, where you can find forums that about anything. I mean, really, look at us. Like, we talk about a lot of really disturbing books, and there's some audience for it. I think that even probably more nowadays, you can find anything you want, and people who feel any way that you feel, you know, similar online. And it's almost scary when you get like-minded people together in a negative way, you know what I mean? Because it becomes like an echo chamber, and then you're only being reciprocated what you feel, and that can lead to other dangerous things. And also, you never know what's real online, and everything, it's just, you know what I mean, like that, it's such an interesting way to even interpret online usage in general, because you don't know what anybody posts is real. Everyone's hidden by this anonymity that makes them feel almost untouchable in some way. Like, I know for a fact some horrible comments are left online that people would not say to people's faces if they weren't hidden behind the internet. And so you can also look at it as like the consequences or lack thereof of that internet anonymity, which I found very interesting, especially reading in this day and age. Yeah, and like I said, a place to find like-minded people, no matter how disturbing these people are. It begins with like this interest in Brad and kind of evolves into this more disturbing forum where people want to see him hurt or hurt him. Maybe. I mean, maybe not. You know, it's kind of like that baby book that we talked about before, where you truly don't know what's real or what's not real. So it makes it really cool in that manner. It's obviously nothing like American Psycho, but I do find some sort of similarity there. You know, like I read this and I get like a reminiscent idea of American Psycho in my head, but they're very, 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 very different reads. Okay. Oh, also the internet sleuthing. I mean, that is still huge nowadays, and I could not imagine a story like this taking off in mainstream and how everybody would be involved with it, especially things with short form content now where videos just get picked up and then, you know, everybody says their 2 cents about it or whatever. So when this Brad character goes missing and may or may not pop up somewhere else, you have people like, well, I'll call my friend in this area and see if they could get in touch with their escorts in that area. And it's just like a whole collective effort to get to the bottom of the story and find out who Brad really is or what's actually going on. And that is, I mean, I think still true. There's been plenty of times where there have been true crime things where people have kind of like their own ideas in a forum or what have you, in a comment section even, of what actually happened to that crime. And so I think that this is probably, I mean, maybe even more relevant. It's hard to say because I wasn't really, I mean, I was on the internet in 2004, but not really. And the internet has changed drastically in that time. So I don't know. I guess I can only really talk about it from a perspective now, but for a book to still have this much meaning and, you know, interesting things to look at in it, I think is a testament to how well the book was written even 20 years ago. Okay, so let's move on here. I already said it was told in that interesting way where it's written as forums and stuff. And so it's not at all a story, but at the same time, it's a linear story. It's so interesting because you only get these forums. So it's linear in the way that it's told, but it's definitely not a cohesive novel in any sense. And there's so many people adding little pieces of the puzzle here and there that you don't ever really know the full picture. So it is a very interesting way to read a story. And I know I said this a lot this year, but I keep reading really great books. But it is really an experience in itself reading it and just, yeah, trying to figure out what's going on. It's really cool. So the way that it was set up, I think, is worth the read anyways, if you're okay with the disturbing stuff. Will not recommend this to everybody. I also want to say that the people on this website, they do kind of conflate sex, love, fantasy, reality, pain, infatuation, death. Like it's all kind of mixed up in this weird, bizarre forum where people can just say their darkest, dirtiest thoughts and you don't know if they're just saying that or if it's real. But a lot of the infatuation surrounding Brad certainly is real. But as far as how far that goes, it's kind of, yeah, I mean, nobody really knows. And that's what's cool about this is I think you can definitely read it and interpret it in a different way. But I lost what I was gonna say. Okay, cool. Another thing I wanna say is that even if everything isn't as it seems, because with a book like American Psycho and a book like this, the really messed up, disturbing stuff that you're reading, for me at least, I can almost disconnect from that and not feel as like it's as vile and disgusting as other books because you don't know if it's real. That doesn't take away from how gross it is, but it makes me feel differently than reading other books, if that makes sense. And I don't know if other people feel that way or not, but I do feel like because you're not sure what's going on, that it makes it easier to read. But I don't want you going into it thinking that it's going to be like a lighthearted read. It's not. It's fucking vile. It's disgusting. But also, I will say, even if the stuff is not, even if some of it's not real, even if some people are exaggerating, and even if some things you learn the truth about, the stuff not told is more disturbing than the stuff that is told. The between the lines of, okay, that might not be real, it might be real, but it might not be real, but also what the fuck was that? Because that we don't get more information on, and that seems more messed up than what's going on over here. Like, you just don't really know either way, and it makes the story that much more interesting. Okay, let me just tell you really quick why I personally love this book. I love books that aren't just violence. Now, there's a time and a place, and I love a disgusting, dirty, gross read, just like the next dude. But for my more meaningful books that stick with me longer, and that I would say are more 5-star reads for me. Because, I mean, a 5-star read to me is a perfect book. I wouldn't change anything about it. And I did rate this one 5 stars because I just thought it was so cool. And the way it was written was so interesting. It wasn't like anything I'd ever experienced before. So for books that are more 5 stars, perfect books, I like the disturbing books that I can find my own meaning and interpret the text in some way that leaves me with something. And so, you know, I always talk about digging under the surface and like finding meaning in books, and I think that you can do that with just about anything. But there are definitely more books that have more metaphor and analogies and whatever under the surface than other books do. And then there are some that are just kind of straightforward reads, and there's a time and a place for everything. I know that sometimes with books like that, okay, let me give you an example. The new Palahniuk book, what is that called? Not Forever But Today? Or something like that. It has like a 2 point something on Goodreads. Arguably not a well-liked book, okay? And it's messed up and it's gross and it's fucking weird. And so I do think that with specific books kind of more in that category, you do have this story, and if the story is too convoluted or too weird or you have to dig too much, people might not make it down to the meaning of the story, and therefore maybe not have a good experience with a book like that one, where it's just like on the surface level, two brothers going at it, and people are like, what am I reading? But if you take the time to analyze it, you might like it more. But if this story's too weird, I can see why certain people would be like, not for me. But with a book like this, what I liked so much about it is that the story is so coherent and clear and interesting that I think that even if there is no point to the story, which I would argue that there are definitely some quotes in here that I'm like, oh, okay, that might actually be what this writer is trying to say with writing all this disturbing stuff. But even regardless of all that, the story is so unique in itself and so clear and straightforward and fucked up that I think you don't necessarily have to do the work, and you could just enjoy it as a baseline fucked up tale of these male escorts. And if you wanted to dig under the surface, I think you can find a little bit more of what's hiding under there. I mean, there's comments of like the brutality and beating a man down until he has nothing left. HIV and AIDS are mentioned in here. There's a lot going on. And then even just the stuff on top of that about the internet in this day and age, in this context, which may not even have been what the writer intended, but I think as a modern day audience, you can still interpret that and analyze that even further and think about the implications of the internet nowadays and how things that are said or done on the internet definitely have real life consequences, but also may not have any consequences, especially for how disturbing and how far people take the things in the book. I never know if I'm rambling too much about a book, especially something like this where I just vaguely tell you that it's about this escort named Brad that people are infatuated with and want to hurt or learn his story. So I don't know, hopefully this is interesting enough that I piqued some of your interest. Not all of you, because I know that this stuff isn't for everybody and I definitely wouldn't recommend it for everyone. But if you like the things that I have recommended in the past, you like things that are more violent and disturbing and messed up, and you get to certain points and you go, oh my goodness, what am I reading? This is going to traumatize me for the rest of my life. Like that kind of thing. Then yeah, give this one a read. I don't really know how to end this, but yeah, what an interesting story. I mean, yeah, it was just cool. It was cool. It's one of those, again, where I've been driving my husband crazy the last day or two reading this, being like, but is this Brad? I don't know if it's Brad because this, and what if, is Brad over there? I've been driving him nuts. So I'm glad that I can, you know, drive you nuts instead. So yeah, there's the book, The Sluts by Dennis Cooper. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that this has found somebody, you know, one person as a target audience, and somebody gives this book a read. Otherwise, let me know if you guys have read this one, and if you recommend any other Dennis Cooper books for me. I've read Closer, and I did enjoy that one, but my goodness, is it so different than this book. I would say this one I liked more, and it was just more of an interesting, fucked up story. So thank you. Leave me all your comments down below. Let me know if this is the kind of thing that you guys are interested in, or if you'll avoid the violence. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with another horror video. Bye, guys.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear that the thoughts build up until I can't hear, that my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.